Hello everyone, welcome back to Helldivers 2, and welcome to all the new Xbox divers. The battle to spread liberty and democracy has been going on for a while now, and my partners in crime and I have been playing since day one. Back then, we didn't have a lot of warbonds to choose from. That's not the case now. New players have a ton of options right out the gate. With that in mind, this SuperCut is for all you newcomers to help you figure out where you might want to spend your hard-won super credits. Please keep in mind, these rankings are based largely on my own playstyles and experiences, input from the divers that I regularly play with, and feedback from randoms. Also keep in mind, this SuperCut covers parts 1 through 4 of this ranking series, going over everything up to the Force of Law Warbond. Collabs are not included, and Control Group, along with Dust Devils, which is about to release next week, will be included in Part 5 of this ranking series. Let's talk scoring. We're looking at 4 items from each warbond, and their booster. Armor passive is being used as filler for any warbond that doesn't have a 4th item, or a booster, or where the armor passive simply outscores the booster. Each item will be scored 1 through 10, and those scores will be tallied, and the ranking built from there. Regarding Helldivers Mobilize, owing to it being significantly larger than all other warbonds, and the fact that it's the default that we all start with, we'll discuss it and score it, but its placement in the ranking will be honorary as its size makes it an unfair comparison to everything that came after. On that same note, this is the only warbond that isn't going to adhere to the same 5-item structure as all the subsequent warbonds. Because of the size of this warbond, we're just going to focus on the 5 best items that it has, most of which happen to be boosters. And we're not going to bother talking about the armor passives, because a lot of those early armor passives weren't actually unique to the warbond and you could get them elsewhere. That said, let's talk Helldivers Mobilize. First off, we're looking at the Breaker Shotgun. Is it good? Yes. In fact, it's a bit of a beast when you first unlock it. But it's not long until you can replace it with something better. Used to be that something would be the Breaker Incendiary, and now there are even more options to choose from. For that reason, the Breaker gets a 6. Next, we're looking at the one-time king of energy weapons, the Scorcher, the last weapon available at the very end of Helldivers Mobilize. Time was, enemies would die from fear before the projectile could even reach them. Likewise, Helldivers would die if they shot the cockroach by their feet. With a whisper quiet sound profile, speedy single-shot ROF, a full auto option, great damage, and splash damage, the Scorcher is a beast. Its one handicap, the ammo capacity. Bring your spare mags for this one, because you're going to need them. For that reason, the Scorcher gets a 9. Pair it with the Siege-ready armor passive, and enjoy. Now, let's talk about some of the boosters. Hellpod Space Optimization is the first booster any of us can unlock, and it's got a ton of staying power. If you're in a full squad, odds are someone is carrying this bad boy. And when you consistently pop out of your Hellpod fully stocked on stims, ammo, and grenades, you'll understand why this booster is a 10. Next, we're looking at Vitality Enhancement, a booster which has recently become my go-to for solos and full squad missions alike. More survivability equals more success. Plain and simple. That said, unless you're running certain kits which require the Vitality Enhancement to survive, it's often one of the first boosters to be swapped out for something else. Vitality Enhancement nets a score of 8. The last item we're looking at for Helldivers Mobilize is the Stamina Enhancement Booster. Given the fact that stamina is the life's blood of Helldivers, right behind liberty and democracy of course, I don't think any players would dispute this booster's utility. More stamina equals more running equals less getting caught by those pesky enemies that want to see what your insides look like. Like Vitality Enhancement, I've seen this one drop off the loadout screen a fair amount, though it seems to have a bit more staying power than the former. For that reason, Stamina Enhancement gets a 9. This gives Helldivers Mobilize an honorary score of 42, with honorable mention going to many of its other items, specifically the Trailblazer Scout Armor, the Democracy Protects passive, the Muscle Enhancement Booster, and begrudgingly, the Diligence Counter Sniper Marksman Rifle. God, I hate that gun. Alright, Next up, the Steeled Veterans Warbond, home of the Incendiary Breaker, once the undisputed lord of shotguns and the bane of a certain Linguistxx playtime. Horde of enemies in front of you? No problem. The Incendiary Breaker spits fire and hate with alarming speed. And while it's still a solid choice for your go-to, it's taken some hits since the early days of Helldivers 2. Having never been a big lover of this weapon, based mainly on my not liking to unintentionally TK my squad and the amount of times I've been intentionally TK'd with it, I turned to the man, the myth, the legend, Darkside01, who it turns out killed me with that weapon more times than I had tears to shed. His take? The Incendiary Breaker is amazing, but the cookout's better. 7. Enough said. Now we'll look at our first non-firearm weapon for this list, the Incendiary Grenade. While they were good before, they've been made even better since. While impact grenades are very popular owing to their ability to be thrown further without mid-air detonation, timed grenades pack a bit more punch. Bug breach? Easy. Horde of voteless? Not for long. Battlefield s'mores? Got you covered. These fiery bastards are solid. Want to run them till your retirement? Go for it. The Incendiary Grenade gets an 8. Back to firearms. It's time for the Jar 5 Dominator. While this was never a personal favorite of mine, it's got a lot of players behind it. Want to be able to drop most non-heavy enemies in the blink of an eye? The Dominator's on the job. Provided you can aim, which I can't, so no thank you. That said, the Dominator's getting an 8. Next in line, the Senator Pistol. Want to be a lawman for Super Earth? 6-shooter and all? No problem. This sucker packs a wallop and makes a good counterbalance to a spray and pray primary that lacks stopping power. And by stopping power, I mean the ability to drop a Hulk at high noon with a few well-placed shots. The Senator is well deserving of its 9. Where Steeled Veterans falls down is in its booster. Flexible reinforcement budget only has use if you've totally borked your mission and happen to need a quicker timer on additional reinforcements. It may have limited utility for newer players who are still finding their footing, but its use quickly begins to fall off after that. Flexible reinforcement is a 1. Buy it if you have nothing else you need or when your closet completionist kicks in. Steeled Veterans nets a total score of 33, making it a strong contender for top Warbond. You like fire? You like killing stuff? Steeled Veterans is going to be worth your time. Our next Warbond is Cutting Edge. The debate over the best Warbond comeback rages between this and Polar Patriots. With an essentially pointless booster and a situational armor passive, this Warbond looks like it should be a pass. But let's take a closer look. The Sickle is a fun gun, and as ARs go, it's not bad. That said, most ARs in Helldivers 2 aren't great. The Sickle is the lowest of the good ARs. Potentially infinite ammo, pinpoint accuracy, who doesn't like that? But its AP and stopping power are lacking. Is it a good choice for primary? Absolutely. But there are better options. Several, in fact. For that reason, the Sickle's going to get a 5. Now, the Punisher Plasma is a surprisingly versatile shotgun, though its arc and AoE damage make it more like a short, portable mortar or grenade launcher. Energy splash damage does pretty well across the board, and if you favor a weapon with a solid arc to your shot, the Punisher Plasma is going to be for you. 7. The next item was probably the single biggest point of contention with my previous ranking. The Stun Grenade. I called it niche. Was it good? Absolutely. But was it key? No. Then came the deluge of comments singing its praises. So much so that I resolved to run stun grenades and stun grenades alone for several weeks in an effort to see if I could figure out what everyone else was apparently seeing with it. I didn't. I'd rather kill enemies than just slow them down. And using them to save divers that are in trouble often stunned the diver I was trying to save, resulting in death anyway. Add to that the bump that incendiary grenades have received and the addition of gas grenades, and the utility that stun grenades once had has slipped a bit. But they still pop up pretty often in regular play. I'm giving these an 8, niche though they may be. The Blitzer was a bit of a sleeper hit. One that I found out through comments last time seemed to function better for a good amount of players when hip-fired rather than aiming. With solid stopping power and the ability to hit multiple targets, and the fact that it looks frickin' cool, its only detracting factor is its limited range. While it's not a favorite of mine, I recognize its merits, so the Blitzer gets an 8. As I mentioned, Cutting Edge's booster was garbage, so instead of looking at localized confusion, we'll be looking at the armor passive Electrical Conduit. This booster has had fans since it was first released, which I never understood as there simply wasn't enough electrical damage in the game at that time. And what little there was came almost exclusively from other players, and it was pretty easy to avoid. To be fair, that's still pretty much the case now, but with the addition of the Force of Law Warbond, we got the De-Escalator and the K9 Drone Backpack. These made Arc builds top dog as far as elemental builds go. With that in mind, Electrical Conduit gets a 7. This puts Cutting Edge at a well-deserving score of 35 points. Unlike Cutting Edge, which had a bit of a rocky start, Democratic Detonation was a fan favorite out the gate. Solid weapon options, good destructive power, it had a lot going in its favor. Since release, some of its items have gotten better, and one in particular has emerged a little worse for wear. First up, the Explosive Crossbow. A strong contender for the best primary in the game, this weapon came out of the 60 days of updates with renewed purpose. A single-hand primary allowing for package pickup or carrying a shield, destructive power for a wide variety of target demolitions, and a quick rate of fire with AoE damage. It should be no surprise that the Explosive Crossbow warrants a 10. Next in line, the Eruptor. Man, I loved this gun. In its original state, it would hold the spot that the crossbow currently has. But it got nerfed, and then it got buffed, but is now outclassed by its smaller companion. The Eruptor can do more or less the same thing that the crossbow can, but it's a two-handed weapon, and what it does do, like the crossbow, it doesn't do quite as well anymore. It gets an 8. Our next contender is the Grenade Pistol. A single shot that packs a ton of power and destructive capacity. Prior to the release of the Ultimatum, I'd have comfortably said the Grenade Pistol was the single most popular secondary weapon in the game. So much so that even though everyone is currently Ultimatum crazy, you still see the Grenade Pistol all over. It's a 10. Hands down. Next up, the single greatest rags to riches story in the history of Super Earth. The Tale of the Thermite Grenade. These used to be a neat little noisemaker for the 4th of July and are now a versatile giant slayer. The single strongest grenade in the game, sticking to targets and causing burn damage before the explosion, the Thermites opened up a world of possibilities for builds owing to their ridiculous damage and utility. If I could rate them above a 10, I would. Last up for Democratic Detonation is the Expert Extraction Booster. Now, I personally love this booster. An enemy-less extraction is pretty boring, especially when it's 3 minutes of waiting to see which one of your teammates is going to get bored and start TKing you. On the flip side, an enemy-field extraction can quickly turn into a nightmare, especially against the new Gloom and Predator Terminates. Being able to take a full minute off that wait time is awesome, I think. But I'm pretty sure that on this one, I'm in a camp that's not that big. This booster gets a 5, but I think it should be higher. This puts Democratic Detonation at a well-deserved 43, a serious contender for top Warbond, and that's not even accounting for the Adjudicator, which deserves honorable mention as quite possibly the best AR currently available. The remaining Warbonds will need to put in overtime to best this beast. Let's see if they've got what it takes. Next up, Polar Patriots. And first in line here is the Tenderizer Assault Rifle. For my money, this only slightly beats out the Sickle as a solid AR. It's got better damage, a good rate of fire, and accuracy, and though it's low armor pen, it's often suspiciously better than that. I give this a 6. Next up, Incendiary Impact Grenades. No fuse for longer throws, detonation on impact, slightly less damage than their timed cousins. Incendiary grenades are solid no matter which option you choose. As far as which is better, well, that's a 6 of one, half a dozen of the other situation. Like their cousins, the incendiary impact grenades get an 8. Now, we're going to follow those up with the Purifier. Once a laughably poor weapon, the Purifier has since become a freaking monster. Rapid fire shots as fast as you can pull the trigger. Charged shots that pack some of the best primary damage in the game with splash damage. With the ability to drop airships with a few well-placed shots. The Purifier is neck and neck with the explosive crossbow for the best primary weapon in the game. It's awesome. A 10, no contest. The last weapon we're looking at here is the Verdict Pistol. It's your standard sidearm. Good, but not great, with no real standouts to speak of apart from having a snazzy laser. It gets a solid 5. Depending on the route you take to get to it, it's probably going to be worth using, but there are several better options. The booster, Motivational Shocks, has niche uses at best. While it does make a notable difference when used, that's not enough to keep players from giving it the boot for damn near any other booster. It's a 2. Buy it if you don't have anything better to do with your medals. Honorable mention here to the Arctic Ranger armor, which is just a new skin for the Trailblazer Scout armor from the Helldivers Mobilize Warbond. Polar Patriots weighs in with a total of 31 points. Our next Warbond is the Viper Commandos. Wow, this one was a letdown on release. It looked kick-ass, and we had high hopes, but not so much. Its one standout makes it worthwhile, though if you're grouped, someone else probably already has it equipped. Here we're starting with the Warbond's secondary firearm, the Bushwhacker sawed-off shotgun. This thing's not bad. I've had a lot of fun with it, and if you're here for the standout on page 3, then this one's worth playing around with. But it's going to get replaced pretty quickly depending on where you've been and where you're going next. The Bushwhacker gets a 6. Next up, throwing knives. Well, they're sneaky and have high damage. That said, about the only thing they're worth using for is killing off other players in a knife duel. Outside of their initial release and players murdering each other, as I just mentioned, I've never seen a single player running these. They're a gimmick, plain and simple. Buy them when you have medals to spare, and give them a whirl before you put them away forever. Throwing knives are a 1. This Warbond also gave us another AR we didn't need, the Liberator Carbine. What makes it special? Nothing. What makes it different from the other crappy ARs? Nada. It's just as bad as the other garbage tier assault rifles. The Liberator Carbine's getting a 1 also. Peak Physique is the Viper Commando's armor passive. It boasts additional melee damage, which ended up being lackluster upon release because at the time, we only had the shit throwing knives for melee. Nowadays, we have more options, but that's not helping much. This is a game where they want the stratagems to shine, and we had to lobby for firearms that actually worked. If you're using melee, you're doing so for fun, and you're probably getting wrecked in the aftermath. Now, the other half of Peak Physique isn't bad. Better weapon handling. That's pretty sweet depending on your favorite boomstick. That said, Siege Ready pretty much blows that out of the water. With half the boost it provides being pretty much wasted, and the other half now being outshined pretty easily, Peak Physique nets a 3. Lastly, we have the only real reason anybody buys the Viper Commandos Warbond. The Experimental Infusion Booster, which augments the effect of the stims we all know, love, and are absolutely not addicted to. Adding damage reduction and enhanced run speed was a freaking game changer. If you're in a full squad, someone is running this. And if they're not, it's because they're all noobs and no one's bought it yet. It's awesome. Experimental Infusion is a 10. But Experimental Infusion aside, nothing in Viper Commandos is even close to a must-have, and it weighs in at a measly 21 points. Next up, more Fuego, the Freedom's Flame Warbond. When barbecued baddies are the order of the day, Freedom's Flame has you covered. First up, my current go-to primary for anything not bots, the Cookout. While it doesn't fire as quickly as the Incendiary Breaker and has less spray, its stopping power is ridiculous. Shrieker swarms fall out of the sky as easily as they do with the Breaker. Stalkers stop dead in their tracks and fall over after 3 to 4 shots. Basically, if you hit an enemy with this, they're going to take a few moments to reevaluate their life choices. And with the added cherry on top of being a slug reload rather than clip, you can deal with a few enemies and reload on the fly without worrying about wasted ammo from swapping clips. The Cookout is a solid 8. Next up, the Crisper. A secondary-sized flamethrower, which has never really been my cup of tea, this little firebug has a dedicated fan base. Though, oddly, I don't really see it popping up a lot. That said, I hear its praises whenever it comes up. Apparently, setting the ground ablaze and creating fire traps for enemies is a good time for all. My rating here was overruled, and the Crisper comes in at a 7. On the flip side, its bigger brother, the Torture, gets a lot of meh. Seems like it's either the normal flamethrower or the Crisper for our pyro divers. The Torture doesn't seem to do its job well enough to see a lot of use outside of a pure fire build. Though for that, I count the Cookout, which is so much better. With that in mind, the Torture nets a 4. The armor passive here is Inflammable, a 75% reduction to fire damage. While not being as strong as the electrical conduit's damage reduction, this passive has so much more utility. Granted, that utility revolves around fire-based builds, but there's enough fire options that you can have a lot of fun in lots of different ways, and most of them are pretty effective, with some newer options being really effective. Inflammable gets a 6. It's a piece of several different fiery puzzles, but it requires those other pieces to really shine. And now for the booster, Firebomb Hellpods. Now, I'll admit, when I first heard about this, I thought it was going to be kick-ass. But I got over that real quick. All Hellpods cause explosions on landing. All of them. This means that you don't want to be anywhere near that shield pack or railgun that you just called down for yourself when they land. I don't know of anyone who runs this for anything other than to troll noobs or players that are new enough to not know what it does, and find out really quick when they kill themselves with that much needed resupply pack. What this stratagem really needs is a toggle of some sorts, and what I mean by that is it needs a way to selectively activate the firebomb. For example, what if when firebomb hellpods get equipped, every stratagem has an optional down arrow strung to the end? Without it, the stratagem works normally. With it, the stratagem's cooldown is 15% longer to account for the explosive lining they're going to add to the hell bombs, and then it goes boom on landing. Or, even better, the reverse. Hellpod stratagems triggered without the additional arrow stroke get a 15% faster cooldown. Granted, that's a bit convoluted, but this booster could definitely benefit from some added utility, and a faster cooldown on all non-firebomb hellpods would go a long way to upping this booster's popularity. In its current state, Firebomb Hellpods gets a 1. With that, Freedom's Flame comes in at just above the median with 26 points. And now, Chemical Agents. This one was a lot of fun when it dropped. Poison was flying everywhere, and divers were just sitting in the thick of it and just watching everything around them wilt. Good times. First off, the gas grenades. Like the Incendiary Twins, their spread and damage is great. For that reason, gas grenades are solid choices for dealing with breaches, bot drops, and voteless alike. And for defending machinery missions where you have to avoid damaging the structure or the machine in question, they bridge the crowd control gap between fire and stun grenades. Gas grenades get an 8. Next up, the Sterilizer. This one is actually a support weapon, the poison counterpart to our flamethrower, boasting a little bit less of a wind-up and a slightly less danger factor for the diver. I see this every now and then, and I was all set to hit this with a respectable 5, and then I spent several days running an exterminator setup against the Gloom Terminids and had a ton of fun. So I'm making an executive call and putting the Sterilizer at a 6. It's not a must-have, but if you've got it, it's easy to enjoy. The stim pistol is our third chem weapon, and it's actually not dangerous at all. Odd, given how many things in this game can kill other players. If you're someone who likes to play support, then this is the secondary for you. Being able to heal your squad mates at a distance, that's definitely got its uses. That said, it's useless for solo play, and its uses in squad play aren't really enough to get divers to pull it out of the arsenal. The stim pistol gets a 4. It's not useless, but if you don't have it, you're not really going to notice. Next up, another stratagem, the Dog Breath Rover, a poison gas variation of the drone backpack stratagems. While it may have been questionable upon its release, it's since gotten some nice TLC from Arrowhead. I was told this was a 7, easy, but after using it in my Exterminator build, I'm hitting it with an 8. It's pretty solid, especially against the new Terminid strains. Last for chem agents is the armor passive, Advanced Filtration. Like Inflammable from Freedom's Flame, this passive opens up a lot of build variations and provides effective damage reduction for poison. That said, there aren't as many poison gas options as there are fire, so Advanced Filtration is going to come in just under Inflammable with a solid 5, giving chemical agents a total of 31 points. Truth Enforcers is next up. First off, the Halt Shotgun. Now, this thing is pretty cool, boasting 2 different types of ammo in separate clips. One ammo type packs a ton of stopping power, and the other supposedly packs some AP. That said, those 2 clips means double reload times in order to refill both. It's a neat option, but the Cookout's better with its stopping power, CC, and incendiary damage. The Halt isn't a bad gun, but it's not a standout either. It gets a 5. The Reprimand is something I think a lot of us were looking forward to. It's an SMG that's actually good. In fact, it's the best SMG we have available. But it's also the only SMG that requires 2 hands, which means it's not really an SMG anymore, and there are a lot of better options in the 2-handed department. For that reason, it gets a 2. It's not a one-hander, and it doesn't excel as a 2-hander. The Loyalist is next. Like the Purifier? Of course you do, it's frickin' money. Want a smaller version of it for your secondary? The Loyalist is here for you. The Loyalist does everything the Purifier does, just slightly slower. And it still drops airships. You can't go wrong with the Loyalist. It's a solid 8. Where Truth Enforcers really stumbled was in its armor passive and its booster. The unflinching part of this passive is basically useless. Thankfully, Arrowhead realized this as well and eventually added plus 25 armor, which is a 50% increase if you're running light armor. On top of that, they also added the Scout Armor's enhanced radar ping for enemy tracking. While it's not a must-have by any means, you can still put it to some good use. 5. Lastly, the Dead Sprint booster. Use your own life to fuel your running when your stamina runs out. No. Just no. Yes, you can cross the map quickly, if you're also running the Vitality booster, if you're willing to sacrifice all your stims as you go, if you're traveling with a support diver running the stim pistol, if you don't run into unexpected enemies while your health is low, or if they don't find you when you've exhausted your stim supply. Way too many conditions to make this useful, and even then, its use is meh. Not unlike the Firebomb Hellpods, the main use here is trolling the unknowing and watching them freak out about taking unexpected damage. Anything that damages divers and costs unnecessary stims is a no. This gets a 1. Honorable mention to the fact that Truth Enforcer's aesthetics are spot on. Everything here looks great, and the black and red skins are sweet. Sadly, this ranking awards no points for style. So Truth Enforcers comes in below the median with 21 points. The Urban Legends Warbond gave us the Flame Sentry I'd been hoping for. It packs solid limited range damage. I wouldn't toss it anywhere near you, but as the vanguard in a defensive line, divers can just hang back and watch the barbecue. That said, it's not a must-have either. It's just an option that's worth using and is respectable enough to run with indefinitely. The Flame Sentry gets a 6. The anti-tank emplacement is next up. It's accurate and it wrecks. While it has a degree of utility in any mission type, it really shines on wall defense missions. Specifically, it trivializes illuminate wall defense, causing a graveyard of drop ships to litter the field. The anti-tank emplacement gets an 8. The directional shield sounds cooler than it really is. Like the ballistic shield, the directional shield takes your backpack slot and requires a freehand to use. Translation: it only works with single-handed weapons. The personal shield generator just outclasses this hands down, protecting the wearer from all directions while allowing for any weapon pairing. The directional shield needs a rework to make it really count for anything. It gets a 2. The Siege Ready armor passive is the real standout here. More ammo for your weapons and faster reload times. Apparently, it wasn't intended to affect support weapons initially, but thankfully Arrowhead had the good sense to take the knee on that, even if they did handicap the ultimatum by altering their own game mechanics and logic. But that's a tangent for another time. Siege Ready is awesome and opens up a lot of builds that would have previously been impacted by low ammo or long reload times. This is a 10. Hands down. Last up for Urban Legends is the armed resupply pods. Adding a small turret on top of every resupply pod was a great idea. But it sounds better than it is. And I don't mean to imply that it's bad, it's just not... It's not a game changer. And definitely not a necessity. Armed resupply pods gets a 4. They're not without uses, but you'll end up replacing them with a better booster without much trouble. That puts the Urban Legends Warbond at an even 30 points. And here we are, the Servants of Freedom, home of the double-edged sickle. A ton of ammo, scaling damage, ramping armor penetration, pinpoint accuracy. The double-edged sickle is sick, pun intended. That said, it's not all good. As the name implies, it cuts both ways, dealing damage to the player as it heats up and eventually setting them on fire and exploding. To make this weapon really shine, it's gotta be paired with the inflammable armor passive and the vitality enhancement booster. At that point, its pros far outweigh its cons, and it becomes the best AR in the game. But since it does require 2 other items to reach its full potential, it gets hamstrung with a 7. Up next, the Noisy Cricket, also known as the Ultimatum. When this weapon dropped, it was a game changer, and it quickly became most players' favorite secondary weapon. You were essentially able to lob a low-grade hell bomb at whatever you wanted, and its demolition capacity was insane. But since that was basically a cheat code, the Ultimatum was quickly nerfed, and while it may not have the utility that it initially did, that doesn't change the fact that it's still basically a delete button for pretty much any enemy that you fire it at. Because of that, the Ultimatum's a hard 8. And now, from a low-grade Hellbomb to a portable Hellbomb backpack, while this appears to have a slightly smaller radius than the old-school Hellbomb, it still gets the job done. A full squad running these can make short work of a lot of mission types. That said, the cooldown is pretty hefty, so without coordinated squad usage, it's neat, but not really practical. Also note, the portable Hellbomb can be armed by anyone, not just the diver wearing it, by simply walking up and pushing the interact button. As such, the shenanigan factors are high with this one. I'm looking at you, Dragon. The trauma's real, folks, but that's a therapy session for another day. The Ultimatum's Demolition nerf makes the B100 shine a bit better than it did on its initial release. That said, the portable Hellbomb sits comfortably at a respectable 7. Servants of Freedom also brought us airborne Seeking Grenades. Ah, the Seeking Grenades. I had this video done and uploaded with these scored as a solid but problematic 5. Then the bomb drop. Many thanks to Sundown of the SES Emperor of Humankind and Democratic Eldritch Entity, both of whom I found on the Helldivers Discord while shooting the shit, and both of whom set me straight about the most problematic aspect of the Seeker Grenades. Their targeting. At first, it seems pretty random and chaotic. who knows what the Seekers are going to hunt down? Well, as it turns out, the Helldiver does. Ping a target, and that's where they go. Easy peasy. I have no idea where this information is hidden in-game because it's nowhere in the grenade's description, but it prompted me to load in, test some shit out, and then run back to the drawing board for this section of the video. So, now that we know Seekers can prioritize targets, let's talk about what else they can do. 1. They pack the same amount of damage as impact grenades, less the explosive component. 2. You can throw them early to act as a type of sentry that will take off after the first enemy to come into range. Keep in mind, if you have multiple grenades in this mode, they'll all target that same first enemy. Also, there's a timer to this sentry mode, at the end of which they simply disappear into the ether. 3. You can throw them while running from enemies without having to turn around. And if you're using the jump pack, you can do this mid-jump without losing any momentum, let their auto-targeting do its thing, they flip a B and take out the enemies behind you. 4. In that same vein, since you don't need line of sight for targeting, you can hide behind an obstacle or in unseen positions and just lob these in any vague direction of an enemy and let them go to work. 5. 2 or 3 of these can take out a bot gunship. That's pretty sweet. The big detractor here is the fact that Seekers don't have any destructive capacity. And what I mean by that is they only function against enemies. You can't use them on enemy structures. Throw one into a bug hole, a bot factory vent, an illuminate shuttle door, and a second later it'll be flying by your side until it catches a bad guy side-eyeing you and takes off to smack a fool. Overall, Seekers have some really neat utility that you can't get from other grenades, but they'll also require some accommodations that other grenades don't, especially when you consider that you'll need an alternate means of dealing with structure demolition. That said, the pros here far outweigh the cons. Many thanks once again to Sundown of the SES Emperor of Humankind and Democratic Eldritch Entity for the ridiculously key information drop. And I suppose, reluctantly, to Dragon Ruse as well for helping me put the targeting through its paces to get a fuller view of what these things can do. That fuller view, by the way, raised the Seeker grenades from a 5 to a 7, prompting not just an overhaul of this section of the video, but of the end rankings as well. Last, and almost definitely least for this ranking, is the Servants of Freedom armor passive. Integrated explosives. Ever hoped your corpse would explode with the impact of a small firecracker and maybe take out 1 or 2 of the enemies that just ripped you a new one? Yeah, me either. This booster is lacking. A lot. Even with the added buff of 2 grenades, integrated explosives barely deserves a 3. This gives our final Warbond a combined score of 32, with honorable mention going to the Raise Your Weapon emote, which can provide a better arc for the Ultimatum's missile, as well as the Dr. Doom-esque helmet, which looks pretty cool. Let's take a look at Borderline Justice. Aesthetically, this Warbond looks great. Admittedly, all 3 of the Warbonds we're going to talk about this time around look great. But for Borderline Justice, if you're a fan of the Western theme, this Warbond is right up your alley. That said, please keep in mind that aesthetics don't factor into this ranking system in any way. So, let's take a look at the Deadeye Marksman Rifle. Personally, I was really looking forward to this one, but I was hoping it would be a proper sniper rifle. Instead, we got another MR, which is my least favorite primary weapon category. That said, the Deadeye did end up being my favorite of the group. It's medium pen, it has better damage than the counter sniper, and a slower rate of fire, making it feel like the shots actually have some heft to them. But I think I'm in the minority here as I don't see the Deadeye come out very often. It seems like most players really prefer the counter sniper. For that reason, the Deadeye is getting a 5. Next up, the Talon Sidearm. Now, this thing packs some good punch, and if you're planning to run a sidearm-centric build, I could see this doing really well. That said, sidearm builds don't really compare to the more traditional primary weapon setups, and in general play, the Senator seems to be the far more popular option with its heavy penetration, versus the Talon's medium AP. With that in mind, the Talon's going to come in at a 7. Dynamite replaced traditional grenades for a lot of players when this Warbond initially dropped. But once the novelty of the variable timer wore off, players started griping about its less than desirable destructive capacity, and it disappeared pretty quickly. That's not to say it's bad, you can absolutely have some fun with this and get the job done, but there are definitely better options to choose from. The Dynamite gets a 5. Next up, the Hover Pack. Bottom line, it's sick. If you've watched some of my other videos, you know I love the Jump Pack. It's a game changer, but I'm well aware that it's not for everybody. The Hover Pack's going to be in the same category. Being able to float above enemies and rain fire down upon them, reach elevated positions for overwatch or sniping is awesome. As far as which is better, it's a 6 of one, half a dozen of the other situation. You've got to consider player preference, enemy type, what weapons or loadouts you're running, but whatever the case, the Hover Pack is bomb. It's a solid 8. Last up, we're looking at the Gunslinger Armor passive, as it scores slightly better than the lackluster booster Sample Extractor. If you're someone who wants to go all in on sidearms, then this is the booster for you. 40% faster reload on your secondary weapons, a quicker draw time, less recoil. It's kinda siege ready and kinda not, and not a ton of players are really focused on secondary weapon builds. This booster isn't useless, but it's not particularly key either. So there's really no big rush to get to this one. Gunslinger gets a 5. This puts the Borderline Justice Warbond at a total of 30 points, taking second seat in a tie with Urban Legends. Next up, a Warbond made almost exclusively for cosplaying divers, the Masters of Ceremony. Let's state this right out the gate. These are some of the best looking armors in the game. Everything here looks fucking solid. If your goal is to act out a military procession or a battle scenario complete with lockstep marching, a bannerman, and planting your flag for a rallying point, then this is the Warbond for you. That said, its actual functionality in terms of normal play is subpar. Let's start with the Amendment Marksman Rifle. Still not a proper sniper rifle, but hey, they put a bayonet on this one. A burst fire MR that's better than the Diligence and worse than the Counter Sniper. And if you know how I feel about the Diligence wins, then you know this isn't really going anywhere good. The Amendment fills a role that no one was asking for. At best, it's a 4, and that's being really generous. Next in line, the Saber. If you're looking to put the melee bump from Peak Physique or Reinforced Epaulets to work, then you might find a use for this. That said, these haven't really changed the essential dynamic of the game, destroying enemies with stratagems, which has always been Arrowhead's focus. If you're running melee, you're doing it for kicks, and as I've said many times before, you're probably getting wrecked not long after. Also keep in mind that with this, we've got 3 slashing melee weapons to choose from: the Saber, the Hatchet, and the Shovel. All 3 are light armor penetration, and all 3 do roughly the same damage. Now, I say roughly because they're supposed to do the same damage, but in all our tests, they never equaled out. The Saber always came out worse than the other 2. This means that the Saber is worse than the Hatchet, which is purchased directly from the store and doesn't require you to buy the whole Warbond, and is also worse than the Entrenchment Tool, which is a free map-generated item. Now, the Shovel does take the place of your support weapon if you happen to find it and pick it up, so we're really just comparing the Saber to the Hatchet. And in that, the Hatchet comes out on top. When you compare it to the other options, the Saber's really only here for dress up. True, an argument can be made for more melee, like more melee is good melee, but nobody is lobbying for alternatives that are weaker than what we already have. The Saber is a 3. Still on the melee kick, we've got the One True Flag support weapon stratagem. Everything you need to know about this weapon can be found in that first sentence. It's a melee weapon, a single target weapon that would be replacing an orbital or an eagle barrage or a sentry or a real support weapon. It's got some great melee range and it's got medium armor penetration, but it's got 0 practical uses. For the average player, this thing is never going to see the light of day outside of the cosplay uses this Warbond was designed for, as it in no way makes up for what you're sacrificing in order to take it into battle. And for players hard up for melee builds, this won't really see any use anyway. If you're running a spear, you're running the Stun Lance, which doesn't cost a stratagem slot and has almost the same reach. And in our tests, it hit with better damage than the flag, and that's not even counting the fact that it stuns. Arrowhead really should have just gone all in on this one and given us a reason to use it. Waving the flag should grant players within a certain range a decreased loss in stamina while running and give 5% damage reduction just to help them reach the rally point. Planting the flag should grant all Helldivers within a slightly smaller radius, plus 10 to ergonomics and 10% faster reload to help them hold the area. Neither one of these things is going to break the game by any means, but at least it would give players a reason to use this otherwise pointless weapon. Barring that, the one true flag is, as its name implies, a 1. Now let's take a look at the Pyrotech grenade. Does it look like a firework? Yep. Does it fly off to wherever it pleases if someone so much as sneezes within 50 meters of its activation? Also yes. But here's the catch. It kills shit. And for a while, it killed some pretty big shit too. Now, that's been patched out for the most part, but that doesn't change the fact that this thing can do some serious damage when it's used properly. For me, I wouldn't say that I'd pick it over some of the more traditional options, but that doesn't change the fact that the Pyrotech can still be put to some damn good use. It's a 7. For the booster, we've got the Sample Scanner. Another farming-centric booster, but this one performs a little bit different than the one we didn't include in the last Warbond. Don't let this name mislead you. It's got nothing to do with scanning anything, and it won't make it easier for you to find samples, per se. What it does is give you the chance to pick up multiple samples each time you pick up a sample from the ground. This can add up pretty quickly, and as far as I know, it doesn't have a cap like the sample extractor does. For obvious reasons, newer players will get more out of this than vets. That said, for vets who are regularly donating to the DSS, I can see this actually paying dividends if you happen to need to replenish your sample stocks quickly. The sample scanner is going to get a 5, based solely on its farming utility. New players can benefit from it, vets can theoretically find a use for it, and the next time Arrowhead releases a set of ship upgrades, I think we're all going to be dusting this one off. This puts the Masters of Ceremony at 20 points, which is honestly better than I thought it would score. Now, the Force of Law Warbond. Another solid-looking set of equipment here, even more so if you're a Judge Dredd fan. First up, the Pacifier. This AR was surprisingly sweet. While, like most ARs, its DPS is a little lacking, it boasts medium armor pen and can quickly stun lock enemies. I found myself being pretty miffed when I had to put this gun away to continue leveling up other weapons. As far as ARs go, we've got the Adjudicator or the Double-Edged Sickle as top dogs. The former just being a solid choice outright, and the latter being amazing with the right gear and booster. The Pacifier isn't going to match the damage of either of those options, but its armor pen and stun lock make it a tempting alternative, and deservedly so. It gets an 8. Next up, the sickest looking weapon we've gotten in a good while, the De-Escalator. A 6-shot arc grenade launcher with a quick rate of fire that can be set to full or semi-automatic. The De-Escalator easily handles hordes and behemoths alike. A lot of players critique its lack of damage, yet it rips through enemies with ease. Its minor downside is going to be its reload. A full reload is very slow, but once you get used to reloading after every shot, that doesn't seem to matter as much. The biggest downside is the fact that the De-Escalator has no destructive capacity for structures or objectives. You'll need to make sure you've got actual grenades in some form to deal with egg nests, bug holes, bot factories, and the like, because the De-Escalator only cares about enemies. Even still, this thing's a beast. The De-Escalator gets an 8, and if it ever gets even minimal destructive capacity, it'd be a 10. From there, we're moving to the Guard Dog K9, a rover drone boasting an arc thrower. This baby actually fires much faster than I was expecting it to, and it's got some pretty solid range as well. If you're running from enemies you don't have time to deal with, it's going to be knocking them out in droves along the way. Arc-resistant armor is going to be a must here. Even if you're running solo or avoiding your squad, the right angle can still murk you as easily as it can anybody else if you don't have arc resistance. And if the whole squad is wearing it, this Warbond has made an arc team a freaking monster. Bottom line, the K9 is awesome, and it's easily better than the Dog Breath Rover. But since that requires specific armor on the part of the player and or the squad, the K9 is going to get a 7 due to its tendency to TK players and the squad alike. Now on to the grenade, the Urchin. I'll be honest, I was expecting this to be really meh. It's technically got an AoE stun, but it's so much smaller than the normal stun grenade that it's essentially a single target stun grenade. So it seems like it should be a no-go. But when you consider the fact that it's sticky, has a longer stun duration, and works on all but the biggest enemies you're going to come across, you might do a double take. The Urchin gets a 6. It's pretty good, but it's even more situational than the stun grenades. The booster here is Stunning Hellpods, which is arguably only slightly less shit than Firebomb Hellpods. So we're going to focus on the armor passive here. If you're a defensive player, you'll be hard-pressed to find a better armor passive than Ballistic Padding. 25% resistance to all chest damage, immunity to chest hemorrhage, and 25% resistance to explosion. Ballistic Padding gets a 7, putting Force of Law at a total of 36 points. Alright, here we are. Time to take a look at the ranking. At 20 points, taking the lowest score, we have the Masters of Ceremony. At 21 points, we've got a tie between Viper Commandos and Truth Enforcers. 26 points, Freedom's Flame. At 30 points, we've got another tie between Urban Legends and Borderline Justice. 31 points, a tie between Chemical Agents and Polar Patriots. At 32, Servants of Freedom. 33, Steeled Veterans. At 35, Cutting Edge, which comes in just below Force of Law at 36, which is fitting because you're going to want to buy those one after the other to make the most out of both of them. And top dog is the undisputed Democratic Detonation with 43 points. And that's it, folks. If you're new to the game, be it from Xbox or PC or PlayStation or what have you, I hope this helps you get an idea of what you want to do with your super credits. And if you're a vet to the game who's just checking this out, what did you think? Let me know in the comments below. And as always, thanks for watching.